It is another opportunity for us, ladies and gentlemen, to discuss in today's edition of Viewpoint. In today's edition, we will be talking issues relating to Cameroon and the management of state finances. Recently, there has been discussions on the national as well as international level on the management of finances related to sporting infrastructures in Cameroon. That would be our center of discussion tonight. In today's edition, we are receiving a Pan-Africanist, Mr. Ngalim Derrick, and a political observer for us to discuss. Good evening, Mr. Ngalim, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Good evening, Mr. Mange, and thanks for inviting.
The pleasure is us having you on board. We have Mr. Kum Jerome, who is here with us. Good evening, Mr. Kum, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Good evening, Mr. Venatius. Good evening, televiewers. It's always a pleasure to be on your program and in order to discuss pertinent issues regarding our nation, so much so that we can make a step forward. Thank you once more.
Pertinent issues that we would be, discussing them right ahead. We take part one of the program. We take the questions beginning with Mr. Ngalim. 55 billion francs CFA to complete the Olembe Sports Complex. A project for the good of the country, Mr. Ngalim?
No.
He says no. Mr. Kum?
Yes, Mr. Venatius.
Project for the good of the country. Question 2. Should the government seek clarification on the management of finances linked to sporting infrastructures in Cameroon? Mr. Kum, I begin with you.
Of course, yes.
Government should. Mr. Ngalim?
Yes.
Government should. These are their views. Ladies and gentlemen, we go straight away for discussion in part 2. A sporting complex in Olembe, a neighborhood in Yaoundé, is supposed to have been constructed. As of now, 90% of the work has been done. And the government of Cameroon is going in for 55 billion francs CFA loan to complete the 10% of the work left. And statistics tell us that over 163 billion francs CFA has been used for the 90% of the work done. And we are trying to find out in today's edition of the program, Mr. Ngalim, I begin with you. Is it a project for the good of Cameroon? You don't think so?
Certainly, Mr. Mange, I don't think it is a project for the good of Cameroonians. The good of Cameroonians would have been if the members of this government maximized the cost as much as possible, because the weight of the loans that are being contracted now, it's on the shoulders of Cameroonians and the common taxpayer. And you trust me, I always like to go down memory lane or to compare. They say when you don't compare, you stay in darkness and you are prone to taking unguided or misguided decisions. And you will look at statistics in Africa. I like to compare the Olembe Stadium with other stadia across the African continent which carry the same capacity, that is between or as from 50,000 seats.
Yes,
that's the capacity, as from 50,000 seats. And when you look at Olembe, the first 90% has carried a total of 163 billion. That is the amount of money which was supposed to have completed this stadium. And to imagine that at 90% with 10% left, 55 billion are being contracted to complete 10%. Let's look at this critically. How can 163 billion construct 90% of a stadium, and then the finishing slot of the stadium cost 55 billion? That is more than a quarter of the amount of money that is used to construct the entire stadium. When you look at the Mas de Bamako in Mali, it's a stadium of the same capacity. It is constructed on a budget of 18 billion.
18 billion.
18 billion. And the project is fully delivered. You look at the Epimpe Stadium in Abidjan, which is on the way, and which is of the same class as the Olembe Stadium. The cost is 50 billion francs CFA. It's on the way and it's getting to completion certainly and surely. You look at the Rade Stadium in Tunisia, it's on the cost of 49 billion. What makes the case of Cameroon different? Yes, it is true when the members of this government want to commit a crime, they will first of all go into some sort of mass or public media propaganda to make believe Cameroonians. And I tell you what, they will tell you, yes, the stadium has 2 training stadia in it,
yes,
with 1,000-seat capacity. It has an Olympic swimming pool.
Yes.
It has a basketball court. It has a gym. It has a volleyball. It has
a
tennis court. A tennis court.
5-star hotel.
5-star
70
hotel,
rooms.
70 rooms.
Yes.
And all of this exists in other stadia across the African continent.
In other sporting complex.
Yes, and they have not used up to half of the initial budget of the Olembe Stadium, 163 billion. None of these countries has used even up to 70 billion in order to realize their projects. But to imagine that the Cameroon government will begin with an initial budget of 163 billion, and now they are going into another debt of 55 billion. That is taking us a huge sum of more than 218 billion francs CFA
to complete the stadium that is, or the complex that is expected to be, you know, delivered. Is expected to be handed over by November this year.
Definitely.
Yes.
And you call that for the good of Cameroonians? I think the Biya government is on a spending spree in this country. And instead of saying it is for the good of Cameroonians, had better we said it is for the good of the pockets of those who are running the project. They are doing good publicity for the project because they just want a big name to justify the mass misappropriation of public funds that is going on with impunity in our country. And I think it is high time Cameroonians sit up to the task and take their responsibility and put things straight.
Mr. Galim, before we continue, you know, after what happened with the 2019 AFCON competition that Cameroon was supposed to host, we Cameroonians were on the government's neck why we could not succeed in hosting the competition that had to take place in 2019. And would it not be that the government has decided to spend so as to bring the level of this stadium or the level of this complex to an international standard, so that at least we can be sure that we have the infrastructure in 2022?
I would not make it sound like I have a particular issue with the members of this government, but if you take me back to where I had tried avoiding the temptation of going, I would still go back to it if you wish.
Yes.
What would be the reason for the members of this government to refuse buying a bag of cement at 3,500 francs? All of us know where it is bought. To go and buy from another supplier. And then you find funny statistics like a bag of cement costing 60,000 francs or 70,000 francs. 16,000 francs.
Yes.
And you have a trip of sand. How much is an average price of a trip of sand?
About 65,000 francs.
And how much did
the
contractors buy?
All right.
From there, I think I will be justified in saying that there is a spending spree which is not certainly for the good of Cameroonians, because we know the transactions that go behind when I come to say I bought a bag of cement from you at 16,000 francs instead of 3,500 francs.
Okay. You remain with us, Mr. Ngalim. We'll take what Mr. Kum thinks. Mr. Kum, you think that this is for the good of Cameroon? Mr. Ngalim has given us 3 examples of, other complex or other infrastructures across Africa of the same capacity.
Yeah.
With none going up to that 55 billion francs that we are borrowing to complete 10%. And you think that it is for the good of the country. Let us hear you out.
Yeah, looking at a project of this caliber, and then what is like in the memory or the strength of the government of this country at this point in time, the stadium or the sport complex itself must be completed at all costs. We know that there are cases of maybe mismanagement or poor project management and so on. We have already gone halfway, and it will be a disgrace to all Cameroonians if this stadium or this sport complex is not completed on time, and then we happen to lose the hosting right of the Nations Cup. Now, we are in different countries, as Mr. Ngalim rightly talked of, maybe other countries that they constructed their own stadiums at a lower cost. I want you to say the rate of inflation is not the same in all the countries and at all the times. Mr. Venatius, to be candid with you, to build a house in Douala is more cheaper than building the same house in Yaoundé. I'm not like defending any government official or any project manager. I just wish to say that the loan of 55 billion is for the good of Cameroonians. Don't only look at the money that is being invested to realize this project. Equally look at the benefits, the standard of the stadium, that it will, of which benefit would this stadium or this sport complex will be to Cameroonians. Now, if we say, let's go back and begin to argue, we should not borrow, we should borrow, we should not borrow, 2022 will come and go, and we will not host the Nations Cup. So, whatsoever idea, be it that of the head of state, or the Minister of Finance, or the Minister of Public Works, all the executive arm of government members who have opted to take this loan, it is a priority, because football jamboree, like the Nation Cup, is the highest that bring tourists to a nation. So in order not to tamper with our right of hosting this Nation Cup, because we have been dragged on the mud. We were supposed to host the Nation Cup, I think, in 2019.
Yes.
So, at this level intact, let us construct the stadium no matter what it takes.
Okay.
So, I want to even salute the head of state for a wonderful decision that he has taken.
Okay.
To borrow this money and pump into this stadium, which is one of the best in the whole world, if realized to its full capacity.
Okay, Mr. Kum, before we go ahead, it is one of the best in the world and one of the most expensive as well.
As well. Prices, Mr. Venatius, don't listen to what I may differ a lot with a lot of people.
Yes, go ahead.
Right?
Yes.
If you look at the prices of good, maybe 2015, especially building materials, to 2020, 2021 that we are inside, there is a wide gap.
Of course.
And the prices are not only increasing in some areas, it is everywhere. And then now, the prices for this stadium, the materials are up to date. And I will even differ with people who say that a trip of sand is this, a trip of sand is like that. No, they use but quality material, because this is a long-lasting infrastructure that will save generations to come. And we are doing this in order to do what? Catch up with time, Mr. Venatius, because I know that some people, especially haters of this nation, they are out to try their possible best in order to enable Cameroon not to host this Nation Cup.
In 2022.
In 2022.
Yes.
There are some people, I don't know whether they are really Cameroonians. Yes, because Mr. Venatius, as the father of a house, if I am the one, I will take a similar decision.
Of course.
No matter what it takes. If I can lay my hands and get some money in order to accomplish this project, which is going to bring joy. Those who are talking now, that the 55 billion has been borrowed, if that Nation Cup will be hosted, there will be the same people, and then they will be benefiting in one way or the other, because tourists will come in from left and right, taxi drivers, farmers, restaurant hostess, and so on. Everybody will be benefiting. And remember, this is one of the competition that bring in people from different countries, and tourists will come and discover so many other potentials, and it will make them regular visitors to Cameroon, and it will be a lifetime benefit. Let us not only look at the debt. Comes what? The debt will be repaid. Let's look at what will be enjoying, or what will be offered, what will come out from this stadium after spending on it. If we stop the project at this time that it is too expensive, we will lose the hosting right of the Nation Cup in 2022, and that one will be a big blow, which we
Cameroonians will still complain.
We will still complain,
of course.
And some of us cannot sit here and say, why did the government take this decision? We know there is embezzlement, there is misappropriation, there is poor management of project in our nation.
Yes.
But the decision of taking this 55 billion in order to salvage a situation, which is a very big one for that matter, is right. So I salute the Minister of Finance, I salute the President of the Republic, and all the government base who have taken this decision, not equally forgetting to tell them that after the hosting of the Nation Cup,
yes,
after the hosting of the Nation Cup, they should be auditing.
Right.
What happened when and when.
We'll be coming back to that. That will be the question 2 of our discussion. But Mr. Kum, I just take this analogy. You borrow money and give a lavish wedding ceremony, and after that, you starve your wife. Is it logical?
With regard to this situation,
yes,
I borrowed money,
yes,
and have a lavish wedding ceremony.
Yes,
the wedding is going to bring joy, happiness, and of course, it's going to be. It cannot really be compared to wedding, even though it is similar, because this project is going to bring in revenue. To the country.
Those who are coming for the wedding will come with gifts.
They will come with gifts. They will come with packages, some financial gifts, some material gifts.
Of course.
And then during the course of coming, people of my quarter, the Okada men will benefit because they will pay basic, they will pay taxes, and many other people will benefit in other ways.
Okay.
I will not only look at the spending, so long as the wedding is going to put a smiling face on the bride and the bridegroom,
we go ahead,
borrow the money. Borrow the money than cancelling the wedding.
Of course.
Because if we don't borrow the money, the wedding will be cancelled. And possibilities of hosting or organizing another wedding for the next 50 years is not seemingly
it's not possible.
It's not possible.
We are not even foreseeing that.
We are not foreseeing it.
Okay.
So even if it was 100 billion, Mr. Venatius,
we should go ahead.
We should go ahead.
That is your view, Mr. Ngalim. Are you reacting to this?
I think I would say not all smiles are smiles.
Okay.
And I think the cost of certain smiles
maybe heavy,
can push you not to even decide to smile.
Okay.
And I will tell you, we have carried out similar projects in the past, and the claims were that it was going to bring an eternal smile on Cameroonians' faces.
And it did not.
And it did not. And the projects themselves gradually disappeared from presidential speeches without anybody having to erase them. And my opinion is, without having any negative attitude towards the members of this government and their decisions, the best critical mind is always to tell you, for the good of the nation, that there are certain exorbitant expenditures which are not supposed to be engaged.
Okay. Which are not supposed to be engaged in. That is why we are talking about the management of finances related to sporting infrastructures in this country. And we are asking in question 2, should clarifications be given to the government? Mr. Ngalim, you said something about the cost of cement, the cost of sand, and you would understand that most of these sporting infrastructures are being constructed with imported material. Should the government be given clarification on how the finances were managed? That should be our second question.
Certainly, the government should do some consulting work. That is without doubt. It's true you say the stadia are built with imported material.
Yes.
It is not as if Cameroon imports her own material and Bamako uses local material, that her own stadium is 18 billion and ours is 218 billion. I'd like to bring up something here. I don't like using the word mismanagement of projects with regard to this government. I call it misappropriation of funds. If we are running short of finances to complete this project, it is because a large chunk of the finances for the project have not been used for the purpose for which the debts were contracted. That is why we are running short of finances. I would not like to use the word mismanagement, because contractors who constructed in Bamako, who constructed in Abidjan, who constructed in Mali, who constructed in Tunisia, they left with their normal commissions that every contractor in every country should live with, but they did not run out of the budget.
Mr. Ngalim, remember, like Mr. Kum said, the cost of constructing that very same, infrastructure in Cameroon would not certainly be the same in Bamako.
I am coming to that.
Okay.
And certainly, you are aware of the fact that Aligo Dangote here, he had proposed to supply cement even at lower than the 3.5 that you and I know the bag of cement is supplied in this country. Why was his price not accepted? Because if his price were accepted, the window of commission would not have come out.
Would narrow down.
It would be too narrow. That is why I call it misappropriation. I know the building of the stadium, it would be a beautiful stadium to the standard of Africa. Nonetheless, I will never compare it with the world, because it has no position as far as the world is concerned. But if we bring it to the African continent, when you look, please, I'm coming up. If we bring it to the African continent, there will certainly be among probably the first 2 or the first 3. I'll accept that. But the Cameroon government, after all these years of attempts at constructing stadia at almost 3-fold the amounts that other countries are using with the same material. I don't know if it's that our buyers are too unprofessional, that they buy the same material from the same companies to construct the same stadium, and their own price is 3 times the prices of other buyers from other countries who are evaluated with the same franc CFA. And I come here. If the government has sent a technical team to do consultancy in Abidjan, if the government has sent a consultancy team to do consulting in Mali or in Tunisia, they will certainly have come back. And probably after an evaluation meeting, they will say, God, but if these people constructed this much, probably it's because inflation has favored them to this level, which does not favor us. Why was that evaluation not done? I come to the point. I'm a Pan-Africanist. I would say, like father, like son. Someday here, I made a statement. France has the priority of place as far as major projects in Cameroon are concerned. And other countries can only be consulted when France has cleaned off.
But the construction of this infrastructure is not being managed by the French.
Piccini did it.
Okay. It is an Italian company, and later on the Canadians took over.
And you are aware that even when France is not interested in the project in this country, they subcontract the project. Are you aware of that?
Well, that's an information you're giving us.
They can ask you to take the project, for example, at 200 billion. You give the project to them at 200 billion. They collect it and give it to China at 70 billion. It is the same thing that happened with the bridge here. I always have my statistics very clear at hand. And what I am saying here is, we are not willing enough to stand up to our responsibilities.
Okay.
The level of patriotism is lacking, largely lacking. I would say that. And that is the reason why we find ourselves in this particular position. People just want to feed big from projects that are supposed to be from the good of the entire nation.
Okay, Mr. Ngalim, we take what Mr. Kum thinks. Mr. Kum, you think that government has the right to, seek the clarifications from this financial management of the sporting infrastructure, following what Mr. Derrick said? What is your point?
Yeah, what I actually want to say here is that, like any other project, there must be financial clarifications, and then you must give feedback as any project is unfolding. We are at this stage. What have we spent? What is left? to be spent. Maybe there may be some lackings. If maybe we are complaining that the Olembe sport complex is like eating up much money, I actually don't really blame the government bench. We have what we call poor project managers.
Correct.
People who are managing the project, they don't actually see it as, you know, the lovers of the country. They see it. They manage the project based maybe on their own vision. The government has to clarify, to be clarified on certain things. The iron rod may be used, may not be the one produced by Foko and other tropics here in Cameroon. They may be imported.
Of course they are.
Yes, they are imported.
Yes.
And then a lot of materials like in the dressing. And I wish to say, somebody said, why 55 billion? To construct the skeleton of a stadium is very easy. But to furnish it, it's just like you want to construct the skeleton of this house.
Yes.
It will be very easy for you to do that. But to furnish it
is another thing.
Which entails a lot of expenditure. They have to do what we call auditing. They audit it. They like come up, even though what we are saying in summary is that there are some people who like to feed fat on opportunities or situations like this.
Yes.
But the normal thing that is supposed to be done is what? Clarify me. Why is it that Semencam, Simab, Dangote is between 4,000 and 3,500? Why are you buying cement for this
amount?
We know that maybe in an era like that, it is lacking because of what? Blame game.
Okay.
This person will say we have to blame it on that, we have to blame it on that, and so on and so forth. But we have to accept the reality. The government had the only option now to come in and say we have to do what we are supposed to do.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kum, for your view. We'll be rounding up. Before we go away, we want to find out from you just in 30 seconds. Is it the problem of lack of management, the problem of lack of experience from those handling the project, or lack of sheer will, you know, to do it clearly as it was supposed to be done?
In this,
yes, in this case that we have at hand,
I will put it categorically: bad faith.
Bad faith.
Bad faith in the management of state project from some individuals who want to tarnish the image of Cameroon.
Okay.
We call them, you know, the demons from the house.
Demons from the house. Thank you, Mr. Kum. Thank you, Mr. Ngalim, for being there, gentlemen. That is what we could put together for today's edition of the program. We would be extending the argument further in the next edition of the program, when we should be looking at other issues related to it. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all we had time for today's edition of the program. Up next would be the primetime news with Cynthia Ngwemo. Until we meet again, have a blessed evening. Goodbye. Coronavirus is not an imagination or an invention. It is a real threat that spares no one. We are already counting so many casualties the world over. The situation is serious, and we individually have the choice